Hi, friends. Thanks for joining me today for Dr. Mike Live. Year 2020 will be the most important time in all of history. Why? Because for the first time ever, the entire world will be connected by technology. Over 6 billion people coming together in ways never before experienced. It will be, in fact, a societal shift. I'm reading this information from it's really a promotional card for a book by Opal Singleton, who is my guest today. Let me finish reading this. Folks, you have an opportunity to tell your friends they need to tune in now. Send a text, send an email, tell them they got to get to Dr. Mike Live, drmikelive.com, that platform. Go to Facebook, go to YouTube. You've got to listen. You've got to watch this episode. Think about this, folks. Researchers say that 87% of teens sleep with their phone. A world without borders for our children is also a world without borders for pedophiles, predators, pimps, cartels, and other organized criminals. That means while you are sleeping, all of those folks have access to your children. New technologies are introduced to us every day without instruction or warnings about how predators may use them to exploit children. While most kids will survive with minor injury or exploitation, we're playing roulette with their lives. Thousands of kids each year are victimized through sextortion, social media exploitation, sex trafficking, and child pornography. And new technologies such as encrypted messaging, disappearing video, vaporware, cryptocurrencies, virtual reality, animation, artificial intelligence, and the dark net provide a technology free way to access, groom, recruit, and exploit our children. My guest today is Opal Singleton. She is president and CEO of Million Kids and the training and outreach coordinator for the Riverside County Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. Opal lectures nationally on topics related to human trafficking and has trained tens of thousands of leaders about combating exploitation. She's appeared on national radio and television programs as a guest instructor at the University of Southern California Saul Price Institute for Safe Communities. Let me give you some hotlines, some numbers before we bring Opal on. Thank you, Jared. So there is my guest, Opal Singleton. Million Kids. Write this down, folks. 951-323-0298. You want to get in the fight? You want to help Opal on combating everything I just mentioned? Call her 951-323-0298. Did you know there's a National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline? Well, there is. The National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline, 888-373-7888. 888-373-7888. Now, before we get started, I also want to mention two books that Opal has written, and she was kind enough to send them to me. The first one is Societal Shift. Jared has it up. Societal Shift, A World Without Borders and a Home Without Walls. That was the description I read to start the show. And this is Opal's latest book. You've got to get these books, folks. They should be in your research library. The second one is Seduced, The Grooming of America's Teenagers. Seduced, The Grooming of America's Teenagers. How this has happened, how it is escalating. It is now, I would say, at an epidemic level. We have some serious issues in America when it comes to human trafficking, and I appreciate Opal exposing this and training people to see it and report it. Opal, thank you for joining me today for the live show.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I was listening to what you were saying, and all of that is so very, very true. Where we're at today is just really an eye-opener, and I think most Christian leaders and very few parents really understand the universe that we're living in.
I agree with that, Opal. The more that I get out and speak at different places and talk to Christians in other places, it seems that a too large of a segment of the church is boy, I hate saying it this way, but they're fast asleep. They don't have a clue what is happening. From the back cover of Seduced, you wrote this: "We are at a unique time in history. We have a generation of teens who have never not known the internet." Let that sink in, folks. The generation of teenagers today, they've never known a time when there wasn't the internet. And there seems to be an inverse relationship here. As technology increases, older folks, such as myself, become, well, less technology driven. I'll say it that way. I'll be kind. Parents give kids devices that open the door to over 1 million predators influence our child's thinking on all kinds of issues, don't they, Opal?
Absolutely. I wrote the book Seduced because I work in combating human trafficking. But as I've worked with human trafficking, and I work with real cases, I am a law enforcement trainer. I train law enforcement across the U.S., and I'm an instructor and professor over at USC to train law enforcement in Southern California. And I report to the Sheriff Department. So I deal with real cases, and I have for more than 10 years. And I am known for my research on how technology changes crime and crime solving. But I wrote Seduced originally because of all the training that I did with teenagers in schools. And you become acutely aware that kids, first of all, they don't understand how the internet is made. We're like in this unique time in society where we literally hand our kids devices. But first of all, many times far beyond before they're into puberty. I'll always tell a parent, never give your child a cell phone till you have the sex talk with them, because if you do, somebody else is going to have that sex talk, and it's not going to be one you like.
Okay.
But we're putting our kids in a world that we don't explain to them, and that most adults, including Christian leadership, they do not understand it themselves, and they're not just naive, they're in denial. And that is the purpose of me and Kids Work.
That's a very good way to put it. They're not just naive, they're in denial.
Right.
Statistics, and proof is out there for everybody to see, isn't it, Opal?
That's right. You see, there's a lot of conversation right now across the United States about human trafficking, but the problem is much deeper than that. First of all, human trafficking is the fastest growing crime in America. And I'm going to tell you that probably next year, social media exploitation will far surpass anything that's going on in human trafficking. Because when you say human trafficking, people think you're talking about the issue at the border and the migrants and like that. But it literally, more than 75% of our cases are U.S. citizens, and it's mostly our kids. And what is happening is that things like gangs and cartels and organized crime are starting to have been for quite some time, use the internet to seduce our kids. That, in addition to general pedophiles, because of social media, are meeting on the clear web. They find out that they have a common interest, and they form large-scale communities where they are getting a hold of our kids' photos and selling them. And what they're doing is blackmailing our children. So that's the word sextortion that you used earlier. That is blackmail with a photo. And literally, the University of Florida recently came out with a study. Well, first of all, the Center for Disease Control said that 18,000 kids a day in America are sending a naked photo, and the University of Florida said that 9,000 kids a day are being blackmailed by a pedophile for more photos, and 58% of them go out and meet their predator trying to negotiate that bag. That means we're placing our kids in the hands of pedophiles and predators each time that we expose them to this without arming them about what apps are used, how they're used, and how to protect themselves.
Yes, yes. Human trafficking, Opal, is indiscriminate, isn't it? The victims can be
That's right.
any age, race, gender, nationality, and you mentioned it, and this is hard for some people to wrap their minds around, U.S. citizens.
Yes.
U.S. citizens.
And what's interesting here is that I'll talk to small town leaders, church leaders, and also law enforcement, and they'll say, well, I don't know, we're from a small town, it probably isn't a big deal. The reason I wrote Societal Shift, A World Without Borders and a Home Without Walls is, in fact, it doesn't matter where you live. If you're on social media, you can be violated and exploited. You can be seduced and groomed. And in fact, kids in smaller towns, and especially kids raised in Christian areas, are even a little more vulnerable because they're very naive and they're very protected. And so this is important that we have the conversation and people realize it doesn't matter where you live today. It is a world without borders.
That's right, Opal. And let me just I'm going to draw a line over. We're going to go across the pond and we're going to go to the UK. Now, I'm not going to pick on Islam or Muslims, but I am going to say this. Tommy Robinson is in jail right now because he stood up and exposed Muslim rape gangs who were grooming teenagers for exactly what Opal is talking about. Now, you can call me an Islamophobe or whatever you want, but my point in bringing that up, brothers and sisters, is this. If we don't stand up and speak out and start exposing this stuff, and I'm talking right down to the pew level, right down where we sit with the hymnals in hands, if we don't get people engaged in this issue and start talking about it and pushing back and getting active and exposing it, pretty soon it'll become illegal to say a thing about it. You say, well, that can't happen here. Listen, it's happening in other places in the world. Don't think it can't happen here. Or is that stating it too strongly, Opal?
Absolutely not. I follow all around the world. I started working with human trafficking originally in Cambodia, but I have 3 million frequent flyer miles, so I've been all over the world. And what you're saying going on in the UK has been going on in Eastern Europe, even up in Sweden and England. And yes, there's this thing of not wanting to report it for fear of being labeled a racist. But where I'd like to kind of take this and discuss this is there are some new technologies that have come out that have greatly changed, even since you probably have seen in Societal Shift, that I'd like to address, because it truly is a world without borders. Basically, what happened is about 6 weeks ago, for the first time in history, the Chinese have an app called TikTok, and it surpassed Instagram, Facebook, and Snapchat all around the world as far as number of users. There are more people on TikTok now than any of our big three, and almost no church leaders seem to understand the difference, and very few parents, and yet kids love it. And I really want to bring this out to your audience because it's important to hear this. First of all, let me tell you, I'm not against technology. You're not going to stop technology and like that. And before I go into TikTok, let me back up and just kind of share one more thing. This is the first time since the Tower of Babel that God has allowed us all to come together. God understands that there's technology, and technology can be used for the glory of God. Your kids that raise the money to dig a well in Kenya can literally live stream over and watch that well be dug and talk to those kids. There are many good ways that you can use technology to glorify God. But we are truly becoming one world at this point, very similar to the Tower of Babel, because the new technology, TikTok, the Chinese bought an app called Musical.ly. In 6 months, they became the world's most downloaded app. And they literally, 1/3 of all apps downloaded last week were TikTok. And what it is, it's not a bad app. You just better understand that you are not talking to people you know. In the past, we would put our kids on things like Facebook and Instagram. They might have 100 followers, maybe 150, and they know most of them. However, on TikTok, what you'll see is it is what I call mass audience live streaming. You make a 15-second video because you want to become famous. You want to have the most followers. You want to go viral. And it goes out, and there's no such thing as talking only to people you know. It goes out there, your profile's public, it's got a geo base to it. In other words, if you made that video in your bedroom, they know where you live. And
Wow.
It goes out to literally hundreds of thousands of people, and they can reach your child by texting back to them. It is tied to your child's mobile phone. So when I went on TikTok, and most of them are a lot of fun, they're cats and dogs and stuff like that, but I get offers from people I don't know about every 15 minutes, and they don't even know who I am. I didn't complete a profile, and I haven't made a video. Here's the deal. When you go on that, it is not uncommon to have 50,000 followers or 150,000 or 1 million. Many of the people there have over 1 million to 10 million. If you're 15-year-old or your 9-year-old, God forbid, that should happen, has 100,000 followers, what percentage of them are pedophiles that can now text back to your child and talk to them?
That should
every
cause...
Christian leader in the world should be leading the charge about educating their families and being able to support them, but it doesn't happen.
Wow. Well, Opal, that is one example that illustrates how traffickers operate. They're using technology, especially cutting edge. They're going where all the young people and where the children go, aren't they?
That's right, and that's what I was saying with TikTok. All a pedophile has to do is sign up and wait, and when your child performs, then they can send them back a text saying, "Wow, you're really hot. I'm a Hollywood, representative, and send me more videos. I'll help make you famous." And our kids think that's a cool thing until I explain to them how it works and why they're in danger. It's a fascinating thing. You were saying we're playing roulette with our kids. We are, because we put these kids on apps that have no instruction with them and no warning. We put more warning on a bottle of penicillin than we put on an app like TikTok. And we don't explain to them how they're made and how they work and how bad people can use them against you, so that you can protect yourself and you as a parent can protect yourself and your children. And so that is some of the work of Million Kids. Is we're in the process of raising the money for a documentary that we want to give free to every school in America, every church that wants it, and every parent that wants to download it. And it will explain how the Internet's made, how these apps work, and then how they can be used against you.
Yes. So, Jared, would you put up Million Kids on the screen so folks can go there? millionkids.org. millionkids.org. So there's a big orange donate button in the upper right-hand corner if you would like to help Opal in this. And you said you're doing a documentary, Opal.
We are. I have wanted to do this for a long time because I've now trained over 300,000 people eye to eye. And many of them are teenagers. And I sat with these teenagers. I did it over the weekend. where I went to a church camp. And as I sat with them, even in this church camp, one little girl came up to me and after I'd given the presentation, and she said, I'm on those dating sites. I didn't realize gang members were doing recruiting off those dating sites. And ultimately, without revealing anything personal, she had gone out and met with one of those guys. Now, she said, I like older guys, but he was over 40. Well, she's 17. Hello? So what I tell you is that once you explain it to kids, they will listen and they get it. And so I get case after case where they come to me and say, I wish I'd known that last month. You know, I'm worried about my 10-year-old sister. And think about this, Dr. Mike. We are putting little kids on a cell phone that, you know, is an adult device. And, you know, first of all, they're getting addicted to it, but more important, they cannot tell when that device is connected to the World Wide Web or it's just a tablet with a game in it. And we're not explaining to them. That's why I say don't give your kid a cell phone before you have the sex talk, because they're going to go on there and literally these pedophiles have videos of other kids self-violating that they show to our little kids because they're so young on a device and they don't know what to do to please the pedophile. So he shows them photographs and the kids do this. And you will see case after case where 8 to 12-year-old kids get violated. And it's just devastating because this is happening as they get their moral identity and their sexual identity. And it will change who they are for the rest of their lives. It will change their self-perception and their perception of a healthy sexual relationship.
That's absolutely true, Opal. In chapter 2 of Societal Shift, you have the great conundrum when 9-year-olds twerk. Now, I'm just going to read. There is probably a majority of Americans over 45 that don't even know what that is. You suggest going to YouTube and put in live.me, but you better brace yourself.
Yes, it is really, really like that. Well, the other one that I just found out is how much porn is being sold and given out on Snapchat. You know, people are setting up whole businesses doing amateur porn on Snapchat. But I want to get back to twerking for a minute. I have a lot of fun with my audiences because I always say if you're over 40, you're going to need a chiropractor. And if you're over 70, you're going to need an ambulance. Thank you, Miley Cyrus. Because
that's right.
Few people understand what twerking is, but all of our kids know how to do it. By the time they're 9, they don't understand what the movements mean, but they're pretty good at emulating it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And that attracts the pedophiles. So many of these cases, especially like with TikTok, you know, they have very young kids on there, and that's exactly what those pedophiles are looking for. And if you think about it, our kids are raised on stickers, so they are looking for approval. Sean Parker, that was part of the Facebook development, he called that whole thing the social validation feedback movement, social validation feedback system. And that's exactly what is happening. Our kids go on the World Wide Web looking to get approval and get acceptance, and that's exactly how it takes place. The problem is that most parents don't understand how these apps work and how it's working, that their kids are literally out there in a marketplace.
Yes. Now, one of the things that's alarming, and I hear reports of this, I read newspaper articles about this often, Opal, and it's just baffling to me how anyone could allow themselves to be drawn into this kind of a situation. In your book, Societal Shift, you talk about the psychology of grooming and fantasy relationships. How does that work?
Oh, yes, that's so important. Let me take you to fantasy relationships if we have a minute. I had a case, and it's in both my books, by the way, and I share this with teenagers. And it's really, first of all, before I share that, let me say you cannot solve this problem by running around wagging your finger at your kids. We must make them leaders. Now, that doesn't mean we don't set parameters and we don't check the phone, and if they're violating it, of course, we put up rules and we deal with it. But we must make this generation leaders to understand how this works, because this is going to get a lot more complex. So in the case that I was talking about, I had a mother who was a very high-powered executive, and she had an amazing 18-year-old daughter who had a job. She was graduating. This was May 1st. She was graduating June 15th with an all-paid scholarship to college, and she owned her own car. When Mom came home on Friday night after hearing me talk, she started to tell it to her daughter. And her daughter, to her surprise, began to cry, and she came back from her bedroom with an airline ticket to Ireland and a passport. And she told her mom, this was Friday night, she was leaving Sunday morning, and she told her mom, I wasn't going to tell you till I got there because I didn't want you to stop me. So what had happened is the girl, the mother knew she was playing Xbox and talking to a guy in Ireland, but this girl's a straight A student, so Mom's thinking this is a pen pal. She's totally oblivious that this has been going on for 9 months, and she's very smart. The girl herself did not realize she had been groomed. And what had happened is this guy in 9 months had convinced her to quit her job. She quit school 6 weeks from graduating with a scholarship, and behind her mom's back, she had raised $2,000 and got a passport and an airline ticket to Ireland. So when I talked to Mom, Mom says, what do I do? And in this case, I told her, I said, tell your daughter, if you love the guy, we're going to love him. And if you think he's great, our whole family will think he's great. But let's do this. Let me cash in your airline ticket. I'll give you some money, and we will fly him over here so he can be part of our family. The reason I did that is if you love him, I love him is a way of saying, I believe in you. I'm here for you, and I'm going to help you through it. Maybe your judgment's clouded, but I'll help you through it. What has happened here is that when you meet a pedophile on the Internet, if she had dated him for 9 months in person, she would know all about him. But at 9 months on the Internet, you won't know hardly anything about him. Pedophiles only give you a little bit of information, and you develop a fantasy. And so Mom is not arguing with the boyfriend, and Mom's not arguing with the daughter. Mom is arguing with the fantasy that has been created by this pedophile. And any time a parent gets in a tug-of-war with a fantasy, they're going to lose. So I taught the mother, let me help you unpack this. Ask some questions. Don't be a drill sergeant. What's he like? Is he a tall, gorgeous, blonde Irish guy, or kind of a dark Italian hunk, or, Nikes or Skechers? Does he play soccer, basketball, baseball? Does he drive a truck, an SUV, or a stupid motorcycle? No offense. Anyway, my point is she won't know that. If she was dating him in person, she would know. But you need to help her undo that fantasy, because that's exactly what they do. And when I talk to teenagers in schools, we talk about, we put our kids on the Internet, but we don't tell them what they should be looking for in a relationship. What is an empowering relationship and what's an exploitive relationship? And so I share this story with kids, and I go, how do I know this is a bad guy? Well, he said, don't tell. If anybody tells you not to tell on the Internet, tell everybody you know. They're putting you in a prison, And think about this. How much money did he raise? Nothing. How much did she raise? $2,000. What's he giving up? Nothing. What's she giving up? Everything. If you're in a relationship where you're doing all the giving and they're doing all the demanding, that is not a relationship. That's a negotiation, and you're losing. And so when you start to explain all this to kids, they begin to now understand, but nobody's explaining to kids how Internet relationships work. And all of our kids are out there on Tinder and Meet Me and Plenty of Fish and all those sites looking to be loved in all the wrong places, and they're going to get burned.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Kathy, we're going to go to questions here right after a conference promotion and a word from our sponsors. So be looking there. If there are any questions out there for Opal, then we're going to take those right after a word from our sponsors. Jared, do you have the conference video and the Life Vantage available? Thank you very much. Let's run those, and we'll be right back, folks. Hi, friends. Pastor Mike Spalding here to tell you about the Go Therefore 2019 conference. This year's gathering will be at the University of Northwest Ohio Event Center, July 26th and 27th. The conference will conclude Sunday, July 28th at Calvary Chapel of Lima. This is the largest gathering of acclaimed Bible teachers, researchers, and prophecy experts anywhere in the United States. Here's our speaker list. Author, Bible teacher, and host of the Kingdom Intelligence Briefing, Dr. Michael Lake. Bradley Dean, host of Sons of Liberty Radio. Author and founder and director of Peacemakers Outreach, Dr. John Diamond. Russ Disdar of Shatter the Darkness Ministries. Coach Dave Daubenmire of Pass the Salt Ministries. Pastor and author Dr. Carl Gallups. Researcher Carl Teichribb. Publisher of the Wisconsin Christian News, Rob Pugh. Author Douglas Woodward. Prophecy expert John Haller, David Arthur of Alphabet Man Ministries, filmmaker Tom Dunn, researcher David Paxton, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence researcher Mark Trump, Created Equal founder Mark Harrington, The Last Evangelist filmmaker David Heavener, author, researcher, and lecturer L.A. Marzulli, author Chad Schaefer, British filmmaker Mark Sutherland, pastor and musician Leighton Howerton, former combat veteran and author Jamie Walden, and of course, me, Dr. Mike Spalding. Tickets are only $59. You can secure your seat for the Go Therefore conference at this website, gothereforeconference.com. This event will sell out quickly. Ticket and hotel information is at the conference website, gothereforeconference.com. Hope to see you there.
Healthy living through LifeVantage. Scientific research has validated oxidative stress as the root cause of aging and most disease. Oxidative stress is the result of the production of free radicals at the cellular level that damage our bodies. Protandim reduces free radical damage by 40% in 30 days. It does this by triggering the body's intelligence, activating the NRF2 protein, which in turn produces its own powerful protective antioxidant enzymes. LifeVantage Protandim, NRF1 and NRF2 work together to enable your body to rejuvenate itself on a massive scale, whether by upregulating your genes' ability to produce their own antioxidants, your cell's ability to produce mitochondria, or your digestive system's ability to regulate bacteria. We're helping you stay on top of the aging process while delivering the mental clarity and overall well-being you need every day to get the absolute most of your life. More information is available at www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68. www.abcgotit.com/MIKA68.
Hi friends, Works LLC is a manufacturer of custom-made holsters, mag carriers, knife sheaths, and accessories. Works is your one-stop shop for high-quality inside or outside the waistband concealed carry holster. Works LLC is a Christian and family-owned and operated company that values made in the USA. Visit Works LLC, www.werkz.com, works.com, Works LLC, 855-937-5901, 855-937-5901, Works LLC.
Hey, folks, thanks for supporting our sponsors. And remember, Go Therefore Conference 2019 here in Lima this coming weekend, the 26th and 7th, concludes Sunday the 28th at Calvary Chapel of Lima. And live streaming is available, so if you can't make the trip, you're just finding out about it, can't make the trip, sign up for the live stream. You'll have 6 months of archived material to watch. There you go. Thank you, Jared. So, wow, look at that. The calendar is down to 3 days and 5 hours. Listen, folks, this is going to be a fantastic conference. Many people have been praying for this, for the speakers, and for the attendees coming from as far away, believe it or not, as Switzerland, Germany, the UK. They are flying in from everywhere for this conference because they realize how important this is. We want and pray, the Holy Spirit will fall upon the speakers. They'll speak God's words to the attendees, and the attendees then will have that same fire that they'll take back to their local communities and their local churches, and we can start a grassroots movement. And by the way, we've got Russ Dizdar and Tom Dunn coming, and they will talk about human trafficking. Maybe next year we'll get Opal Singleton to join us. How would that be, folks? Listen, we want to answer your questions. So, Kathy, still nothing on social media?
Right, I'm not seeing anything yet, Mike.
Okay, so we'll turn to the huddle then. Denny, you said you had a couple of questions.
Yeah, they're kind of two in one. Number one, I'm a grandpa. I'm not a parent. Well, I was. So I'm 64, and you rattled off a bunch of different websites I've never even heard of. Okay, it's way above my head. I'm Facebook, and I guess my grandkids think Facebook is for old people. So one, I don't know how. I don't even know the sites that you're talking about. And then I have my son-in-laws and stuff. They don't have a problem with it. And as a grandparent, it makes it very difficult because when I talk, I just sound like I'm an old fuddy-duddy. You know, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand what you're saying because if it's not a problem in their family, then maybe they're naive and they don't realize how much is happening out there. However, where I come from and the way that I approach social media of any kind is basically I recommend, first of all, you don't give a child a phone until they have adult reasoning. Because, you know, and when you do, you educate them. But usually the way I present it is, it's my phone, I'm paying for it, but I believe in you, and I want you to be a leader. You see, I believe that we have a Christian calling to make this generation the most important generation that's ever lived, quite frankly, because how we train this generation of young people to be leaders in technology will set the stage for your children, your grandchildren, and their children, because this is just starting off. This is big. This is as big as the Industrial Revolution. This is an historic time in the timeline of history. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's important to make them leaders, and to do that, you need to be able to engage with them. And so usually what I say with a kid is, my phone, I'm paying for it, but I believe in you, and I believe you're going to be a leader, so I'm going to trust you with my phone. But from time to time, I'm going to look at my phone and check it out, and if you're being a leader, well, that's just terrific. But if you're not, I'm going to bar it back until you're ready. But in the meantime, you are not going to have any apps until I have that app and I understand it, because you're going to explain it to me. And we're going to test it out, and we're going to talk about how it can be used for good and how it can be used for bad. And, you know, by following Million Kids Facebook site, our Facebook posts new cases every 3 to 4 hours on this subject. And so one of the things to educate yourself as a father or grandfather is to follow us on Facebook, and what you'll start to see is, oh, this app, TikTok, is an app that more kids are being violated on. There are various things that you will see that make a kid much more likely to be violated. If they run away, if they're in a single-parent household, if they're being raised by a grandparent, because the grandparent won't know about technology. So the name of the game is decide that as part of the Christian calling that we're going to make our kids leaders. To do that, we must get informed ourselves. You see, one of the things is that we have this veil of denial that goes on. I often will share it with men. And by the way, thank you for asking that question. We need male leadership in a big way for this. But a father, if he saw his 12-year-old son talking to a prostitute, would go, hey, son, we don't do that in our family. We have mother and sister and like that. That same father, though, will walk right by a video game where the kid has just paid money to have sex with a prostitute and killed her to get the money back, which is going on in the book Seduced there. And that's Grand Theft Auto. It's one of the biggest games out there. And he will walk right by that equipment and see that kid playing that video game and go, oh, he's on that thing again. And so there's a whole chapter in Seduced about digital morality. Get yourself an avatar if you have a grandson that's playing one of those video games. Sit down with them and say, I may be lousy, but if you're going to do this, I want to know what you're doing, and I want to play too. Help me get an avatar. That's a character that plays the game. Show me how to do this. Hey, son, did we just kill a cop? Because this family doesn't kill cops, you know. He said, is that a prostitute that you're talking to in that video game? Are you getting points off of that deal? Because let's talk about that. You see, one of the things that happens on the internet is kids feel like it's a world without consequences. In fact, that's heavily talked about in the book Seduced. I did a survey at a Calvary Chapel, by the way, in Southern California. I won't say which one, but take a survey. You'll be amazed at what your youth group kids are using and which apps they're using, which ones are most popular, and which games they're doing. And I will go out and give a survey. At one Calvary Chapel, 1/4 of the kids in that youth group told me that sin on the internet is not sin because it's not real. And, you know, they feel like that it's a world without consequences. We must enter their world. If we're handing them as adult people, as parents, as Christian leaders, if we're handing them the devices, it really is important that we not walk around naively and just hope and pray it all works out okay.
Wow. Denny, did that answer your question?
Hello?
And then some.
and then some. So you got your homework, right, Denny?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, let me take it to another level here that is probably an axe between the eyes for you guys, but I'm used to it because I work in the business. But think about this. For most of our kids today, their first sexual experience is going to be a virtual sexual experience. And very few parents think about that. And it's very important to understand that because all of these video games that our kids are on, most of them have a lot of sex in them. In fact, there's a whole new category. I studied the results of Pornhub this last year, their 2018 sales results. I don't look at the porn, I just look at the data. But they literally had 33 billion downloads, by the way. One porn site, the biggest in the world, had 33 billion. That's 1,000 a second. But there's a whole new category. There's actually two new categories that are really a concern. One of them is amateur pornography. With these live streaming apps, probably by the end of the year, you will be able to charge for making homegrown pornography. And already it's the second fastest growing category in Pornhub as people use all of this live streaming to self-violate or have sex and sell it. But more important, there's a whole new category called amateur video game, excuse me, I've got that wrong. It's called animated video game character pornography. And I read that and I thought, what is that? Now, I'm, supposedly an expert. I'm supposed to know all this stuff. I had not heard of that one. And so I, get on my knees, I pray, and I start Googling it. And holy cow, I'm going to tell you, I am not old enough to see animated video game pornography. And, I do sex research for law enforcement. So I am not a wuss. And it is awful. And it had 69 million downloads just in Pornhub. That's only one site. What is happening is they're taking the characters out of these video games and creating just really raunchy animated pornography. And our kids see it as art. It's okay. It's not real, so it doesn't count. And this is the reason why I say this whole thing is a Christian issue. And we must have Christian male leadership that comes to the table, recognizes it, and comes along to help the family with this. Technology is not bad. You can be on technology, as you just said. You are on this, and you do it in a way that empowers young people, empowers yourself, and glorifies God. But nobody is teaching our children that technology can be used to glorify God. It can also be used in a way that will harm yourself. And we need to prepare our kids on how to use it. This is the first generation that will be connected to the entire world, and the entire world can connect them. So for you to be able to put a child on TikTok and have 100,000 followers right now is just the beginning of where this is going.
Wow. Well, you mentioned the word sextortion, Opal, and that is blackmail. How do children put themselves in a position where they can be blackmailed? You touched on this a little bit. Could you elaborate a little more?
Sure, and there are many variations of this. If you follow Million Kids on Facebook, you'll really get an education on it. But normally, what will happen is that they will meet up on Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat or any of those. They'll meet a stranger, and the stranger, let's say you're a girl. Now, first of all, you should know that more girls are violated through sex trafficking, being put into prostitution. But when you get to blackmail by a photo, it's more guys, because more guys are in video game chat rooms, and that's where a lot of it takes place. But anytime you're in a public chat room or you're on, one of these apps, somebody will start to befriend you. They're probably a 56-year-old pedophile, but they will make out like if they're going after 14, 15-year-old girls, they'll make out like they're a 17, 18-year-old guy, maybe a rock star, or just some guy that's dating and they want to get acquainted. The kids get involved with them and they get that fantasy relationship. And just like I talked about with the case from Ireland, they won't tell the kids much, but they get the kid to want to please them. Think about this. They're hormonal, our kids are, and they're looking to date. They're looking to be accepted, as all kids are at 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. They look around and they start to get that fantasy relationship. And so this guy then will usually, the first thing he'll do is pretending to be a teenage guy. He'll send him a photo that isn't him at all, and then they'll get one back. And then the photo will get a little more risque, and then they want one back that's more risque. And pretty soon we're sending naked images. This is happening all kinds of ways, but the kids on the internet, it feels like a world with no consequences, so they don't do it. When I talk with kids and go out and talk with them about who owns the internet, this is an important conversation to have with your kids. Who owns the internet? They'll tell you Bill Gates or Google or Al Gore sometimes, by the way. But anyway,
Yeah.
Nobody owns the internet. And so once you understand it, you say, well, is that private? Yeah, is the internet private? And every kid will tell you, no, it's not private. And then ask them, well, if it's not private, why would anybody send a naked photo on it? Have you ever thought about where naked photos go when you hit send? And you begin to talk with them. You think like a U.S. citizen, that you have the First Amendment and the Fourth Amendment and the rights to privacy. Mm-hmm. But this is not the U.S. web. This is the World Wide Web. And then I explain to them how the internet is made and where naked photos go and why they want them. Because the minute you send that naked photo, you're trapped. And that's when they begin to come back. And you may have as many as 1,000 or 2,000 pedophiles starting after you. Those photos, if it's taken in your bedroom, have GPS on them. They know where the family lives and where he lives or she lives. And they then want more photos. They want money. That's sextortion. They want photos of you with family members. They'll threaten to destroy you at school. They may threaten to come over since they know where you live and have sex with you. And a kid will just panic, absolutely panic. And so that's why I train school officials and parents and Christian leaders. This is a crime that affects the whole family. And that's why we need Christian leadership to understand it. If 8% of our young people are being sextorted or exploited in some way each day, wouldn't it be smart to create a documentary so kids understand how this works and it doesn't happen?
Yeah. Jared, could you put Million Kids back up on the screen, please? So people can see that. Go to millionkids.org. There you go, millionkids.org. Keeping Kids Safe from Predators. Donate button there in the upper right-hand corner. You can make a contribution to this ministry and Opal's work. We are winding down here the last 10 minutes or so of our conversation, Opal, and it's been very, very illuminating to me. Let's move now to something that most people, they use this phrase, but I'm not sure they understand exactly what it means, and that is the dark net. The dark net. I hear people talk about it, but I don't think they really understand what the dark net, the global dark net, what is it, Opal?
Okay, if you think of the internet as a bucket of water, the top 3%, that's all there is, 3% is where we live. We have Google and Chrome and Bing. We have search engines. We have IP addresses. We can find each other, okay? Below that is the deep web, and that is LexisNexis, big corporations, NSA, like that. Below that is the dark web. The bulk of the internet is the dark web. That is an area where you need specific addresses to find each other. So what is happening is gun sellers, drug dealers, and pedophiles all set up sites in the dark web, and then what they do is they meet in the surface or clear web where we live. They find each other and they say, we're forming this large-scale community and you can be part of it in the dark web. Here's the address. Some of these pedophile rings have 200,000 pedophiles that are buying and selling and trading photographs in there. One up in Canada had over 400,000. And you had to re-qualify every week. This is child pornography we're talking about. These are pedophiles who used to just violate their niece or their nephew and like that. And what they're doing now is that there's a kind of a competition of who can get the most violated photos. So they form large-scale communities called sextortion rings, and they go out and they trick our kids into sending naked photos. Part of it is so for their own pleasure because they're pedophiles, and part of it is because they're buy, sell, and trading them in the dark web. Now, one of the things I want to add this, I know we're running out of time, but one thing I want to share with your listeners is you cannot go from the clear web to the dark web automatically. You need a special kind of router to do that. Now, they're not all that expensive to get. However, you need a little bit better computer. So what you're seeing is many Christian families that are a little more affluent, their kids are the one that's getting sucked into this. What they need is something called the Tor router, the Onion router, T-O-R, the Onion router, Tor. And once you get a Tor router, you can go back and forth. How you know if someone's in the dark web is if they have a .onion account. Instead of .com or .info, it's .onion. And so what you're seeing, I had a 12-year-old kid in a private Christian school here, and he was all proud of his .onion account, and he's looking at very hardcore pornography every night in the dark web because his family was affluent, and he can have one of those accounts, and he thought it was really cool.
Wow. Oh, my. Well, obviously, Opal, all of this that you've described has an impact on law enforcement and how they approach crime solving. So could you talk about that?
Sure. And in fact, that's why I do train law enforcement across the nation, because think about this. By the end of the year, most of our apps are going to be encrypted. And you already have this cryptocurrency, and some other time I'll have to come back on and talk about the Libra thing that Congress is looking at right now with Facebook's cryptocurrency, because that will change the world, and that's a whole different conversation. Yeah. But what is happening here is that you get encryption as a parent. You'll be able to see the email go out or the app text message go out. You'll see the conversation. It'll go out and it'll come back, but you can't make out what it's saying. It's encrypted. And so that's a difficulty for law enforcement, because You know, you have to get a search warrant, and then you have to break that encryption. It's going to be equally difficult for parents because they can see their kid talking, and they'll have all those tracking devices that they've always relied on, but they can't see the conversation. This is the reason why it is so important that we talk to our kids about becoming leaders. I find most kids want to do what's right. They don't want to be violated. And in fact, we ought to be making Christian leaders that are technology-based for the next generation. That is the group that's going to reach the most Christians in the next 20, 30 years. So it's a lot more than just being able to track them, because all this technology is going to reach a point where we can't read it. Think about live streaming. If you live stream something and you don't save it, it's gone. How do you get a search warrant? If you, mom and dad, aren't in the room when they're transmitting, then you may never know they live streamed to somebody. So we can no longer live on just this kind of mindset that law enforcement will figure it out or the parent will just track them. We must make leaders who teach kids to use technology with respect and responsibility in a way that glorifies God and empowers himself and others. And that's really the key to what Million Kids is doing.
Yes, amen. And I sure appreciate what you're doing. Sometimes, Opal, it's true that, this is the dark side when we're talking about pornography, pedophiles, sex trafficking, and all of this. But sometimes human trafficking is something like forced labor, and these people, they're right out in the open. They might be serving you at a restaurant or working in a hotel. How would, and we've got 4 minutes, Opal. How, 1 or 2 points. How can we tell if someone is the victim of human trafficking, they're forced labor, they're in the restaurant, in the hotel, or whatnot? A couple of pointers.
Well, it's kind of tough, quite frankly. Labor trafficking is the toughest one to identify, but they're almost always foreign nationals. Some of the things that happen to them is they don't get paid. They may be promised a certain level of pay, but at the end of the month, they're charged for room and board and like that. A common one is somebody's holding their passports. They're almost always from a third world country, and in which case their family is being threatened. So oftentimes a victim of labor trafficking is the last to be willing to tell you. But if you see something like that, the reporting number, I should give this, is 1-888-3737-888. That's 1-888-3737-888. And so report it. And by the way, if your kid comes to you and says, I'm being blackmailed or I sent a naked photo, the most important thing that you do is you put your arms around them, you love them, you tell them that you're there for them. This is going to get tough, but be strong and go to the police and report that. Don't just go, what the heck were you thinking? And I train law enforcement across the nation. When a kid comes and says, yes, I sent a naked photo and it's getting bad, do not chew out the guy or the girl. Say, this is unfortunate, but this is a legal case, and we're going to go after them and see if we can't find them and charge them. Because kids will not tell because of the shame on it, but it will change that child forever. So it's important that we can encourage them to tell, and that you encourage your child to talk to you about it and say, I hope you never do it. But if you ever get yourself in trouble, don't be afraid to come to me.
Yes, amen. Folks, we've been talking to author, president and CEO of Million Kids, Opal Singleton. Seduced, Grooming of America's Teenagers. There it is. You can pick that up on Amazon. Opal, can they get this through Million Kids' website as well?
They can. They can get it at Amazon, but it's about the same price. If you get it from me, I'll sign it, and more of the money goes towards our work. If we go on Amazon, I only get $4, and it takes 4 months to get it. So, but it's fine to buy it on Amazon. But I would rather if you would buy it at millionkids.org, I'll sign it and ship it to you.
There you go. So Societal Shift, see that? I got a signed copy from Opal right there. How about that? Go to Million Kids. Listen, you can reach out to Opal 951-323-0298. You can go to Million Kids website. You can make a donation for this
And-
documentary that they're putting together. Go ahead, Opal.
And let me give you my personal email address because a lot of times, because I'm a public speaker, I'm hard to reach by phone. But
Sure.
my email is opal, OPAL, @millionkids.org.
There you have it, folks. You can reach out to Opal, and hey, you may want to have her come speak for your organization or in your city and educate some folks. And once again, before we sign off, folks, the National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline, 888-373-7888. If you suspect something, what do they say? You see something? Say something.
You
Opal,
bet.
thank you so much for joining me, and we're going to have to do this again because we just scratched the surface.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
You're very welcome, folks. We will see you next week, but remember, renewing our minds is not an option. God bless you. See you next Monday.